Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. You know who this is, what the press, and the reason why. So here it is. Recently, Tanya Saleh, an Arab entertainer from Lebanon, Mariam Hussein, and a host of others, even in the Philippines and other nations, donned blackface in a show of solidarity with black folks in the United States. This recent phenomenon was in fact done out of ignorance and not out of malice. Black folks, when you're going to discuss this with non-black people who wish to be allies, and specifically with Arabs in this case because they led this trend, keep in mind that this really was not malice, it was ignorance. Nonetheless, do not say, "Effort, black minds making excuses." I'm actually not. I want to tell you this so that you know the mindset of the one you're talking to so you can get the message across more easily, but I will also say that it is very important that you still talk to them like they should have known better. And I'm going to do that right now. So black folks, when you're going to get in these discussions, this is what you need to know. Arabs, I want you to pay attention right now because I'm going to those of you who wish to be allies, I'm going to tell you why it is that black folks must still have this discussion with not necessarily you individually because you didn't do this, but why black folks have to have this discussion with your community as though the ignorance is still not an excuse. Pay attention, both of you, and I'll explain it now. Number one, Arabs who wish to be allies, you need to understand, most of you, most of you demographically are young. And if you were young, then that's good. You need to go ahead and you should know that your intention, a good intention, is not unappreciated. It is appreciated. However, you must also factor in that there are certain things you will have to do as you have chosen to be allies, which is why you were listening. If you are an Arab, Muslim, or Christian, and you're not an ally, this message is not for you. Turn it off. We're not talking. We're not discussing it. Here's the deal. Those of you that are in fact allies, or wish to be, you're going to have to you're going to have to perform 4 steps. The first step, you must change your vocabulary regarding black people. You must stop using the word abd and the word abid, the singular and the plural, slave and slaves, when you are referring to black people, and do not try to justify it. You must stop this. If you are using the words abd or abid when you're talking about black people, even if you don't mean any harm or hatred, you must stop this. And if you can't stop it, you need to come into my comments section right now or the live chat as this is premiering, and you need to say, we, black mind, are never capable of removing this from our vocabulary when talking about black people. And then I can say to my people, here it is in the comments section. Some young Arabs have told me that the communities cannot stop this, so stop calling them Arabs and start calling them terrorists, camel rapists, towel heads, and bomb belts. We're not slaves. They're not any of these things that I just said, black people, but they just admitted they can't stop calling us slaves, which we're not. So we must make it even by calling them these names, even though these are not true. To make it even. Because if you're going to justify calling us slaves, then you are actually committing zandaka against Allah. You are committing blasphemy against Allah. You were saying that it's okay to do it, which means Allah made it okay, which means that Allah is racist, and I seek refuge from ever believing that. Now, you did this unknowingly before. When I say you, I mean your society. Your world, the Arab world, did this before without thinking about it, but now I just made it conscious. If you keep doing it, it's conscious. That's blasphemy. You're not Muslim anymore. End of story. Whoever hears my message and continues doing this knows he's not Muslim. Unless, of course, he admits, I'm doing it, it's a bad habit, but it's wrong. And therefore, I'm just doing wrong. Now, that's still a Muslim who's got a problem. But the ones that try to justify it after hearing this message are committing zandaka. End of story. That's not up for debate. I didn't make those rules. If you're saying that Allah is okay with you calling us slaves but not calling anyone else slaves, but then it's wrong when we call you certain names, then you're saying that Allah is unfair and unjust on the basis of race, and you can't say this about Allah. Do not play games. First thing, stop the vocabulary. Secondly, you must You must throw out the notion that there is a human instinct to prefer lighter skin in terms of marriage and beauty. You must throw out the idea that this is a human instinct across the board. This is not true. Some people may prefer lighter skin. Others may prefer darker skin, think that it is more beautiful. Others, most of the time, may not necessarily have a preference. This mindset is okay, but your culture prefers lighter skin. Let's be honest. It is a cultural thing among Arabs to believe that lighter skin is more beautiful. And it is worse than that. It is a culture among Arabs. It is an Arab idea that humanity is wired this way, which again is accusing Allah of being a racist and making us racist by nature. And that's blasphemy. No, this idea that lighter skin is more beautiful than darker skin is a white supremacist idea, not a Muslim idea, not a human instinct. Get rid of this idea. If you prefer lighter skin, you may be brainwashed. You may not. But if you think that it is natural for all human beings to see lighter skin as more beautiful and therefore more desirable in marriage, you're a damn racist. And you think Allah is a racist. And that's also not Islam. Get rid of the notion. You may have thought this subconsciously before. Now, again, I made that conscious. If you have that idea in mind and you continue this, you gave up your Islam because you blasphemed against Allah. This is not up for debate. I did not make that rule either. So number one, change vocabulary. Number two, change your ideas about the human natural disposition regarding skin tone. Number three, this is important. Do not make a mistake that your elders have made. When black people tell you about racism and white supremacy in any country, shuck up and let them finish. Do not interrupt them. And especially to disbelieve them. Let them finish. If you think that it's not true, let them finish anyway, then observe later on and see how true it might be. Give yourself time to examine it again and decide if it actually is true or not. But when you discuss race and white supremacy with black people, let them talk and finish before you speak in response. And then ask them for the same courtesy. Because right now what happens is that Arab elders, especially, and the Bedou even more so than anyone else, don't listen, they don't learn, they just disagree because they don't want to hear it. And then, of course, they offend black folks. And, well, now you've got some younger Arabs that want to show solidarity and their heart may be in the right place, but they did something that was offensive. And I say that the Arab community in the Arab world and outside the Arab world is guilty of this ignorance because they didn't let black folks tell them anything. You're complaining about racism. Well, if you would just work hard. No. By not listening, you wound up making the same mistakes that white folks, your elders wound up making the same mistakes white folks made. Don't repeat this mistake. Fourthly, these are 3 steps I've given you. The fourth one is the most important. After you have traded information with black folks about this, and if you can listen, then we'll listen and you can tell us what you know, and that's fine. But fourth thing, refrain from saying the same things we've already heard all the effing time. Bilal was black. We're all slaves of God. There's no racism in Islam. We heard that. Don't say these things. Not because they're not true, but because they're used to silence us from telling certain things that are true. We, as a society, are better than white societies because we did not oppress them or anybody else. End of story. Individually, we judge individually, of course. You will, I will, whites will. Well, individualistic non-supremacists, whites will judge individually. That's a different topic. But I'm talking about community-wise. We are better than them because we did not oppress people. End of story. Do not sit up and act like we're just as bad. Individually, we might be. As societies, actually, we're not. Don't try to draw these false comparisons. When black people dislike white people, it's a reaction. When white people dislike black people, it's white supremacy, which is a false religion with a false God. And every Muslim should be outraged at this. End of story. If you Arabs believe that you are at the forefront of Islam, then you should be the most outraged. And you have done a better job on average being outraged in white supremacy than many people in the subcontinent have done. But you still got a long ways to go. We ourselves have a long way to go. You definitely do. See, we have a resistance to the brainwashing, and we have the brainwashing. You have the brainwashing without the resistance. You can only get the resistance from us because right now, no other group of people has really actually led the resistance to this brainwashing except for black folks. And not even all black folks. It's mostly been black folks in the West that have done it. And then black folks in the motherland have taken this up, and they're also against it or for it. But I mean, in other words, there is a resistance in Africa as well right now, but it's largely black folks that have led it. You have not. You don't even have much of a resistance until recently, and you do have it among some of you. Older Algerians used to have a resistance to this. Most of you lost it at some point. You can take it up. And then the Desis, the people from Southern Asia, can get it from you. But right now, you are not at the forefront of resisting the brainwashing. The fifth thing you must do is you must confront your elders. Like I've said to all non-black allies, in Advice to Non-Black Allies, parts 1 and 2, my last 2 recordings, you are going to have to confront your elders at some point, even if it's your own parents. And you're going to have to tell them that it is their fault that some Muslims, specifically Arabs back home in Lebanon and the UAE and Qatar, and even outside of Arab lands like the Philippines, let's talk about Arabs right now. You must tell them that it is their fault that Arabs back home thought this was an okay thing to do because they, the elders, did not listen to black folks tell them about white supremacy. The sixth thing you must do, actually, this should be number 1, to tell the truth. But it's the sixth thing I'm mentioning. You must stop calling yourselves white. You're not. You're embarrassing yourselves. Nobody thinks that you're white, except you. White folks don't think it. Black folks don't think it. You're the only ones thinking that you're white. White folks laugh at you. There is a difference between being light-skinned and being white. You are the ancestors of white people. That's true. You are not actually white people. You are the descendants of black people, and a lot of you know this. And it is nobody but a backwards, ignorant stereotype of an Arab that wants to dispute that. But you are the ancestors of white folks. That's okay. Y'all are related, but you're not them. And you need to stop calling yourselves them because that sounds to other people like you're with them. And frankly, you sound like that a lot of times. Well, your elders have. Those of you choosing to be allies are not the ones that have sounded like this. You just have to understand that you're going to have to confront your people. That's all. Your elders, I mean. If you do these things, you will have taken great steps in healing the rift right now. I hope that this recording one day will no longer be necessary, and I hope that in the meantime, it helps and benefits. The blackest of the black sign of black out. Assalamu alaikum.